Hello everybody, Troublemaker here with more War Game Red Dragon. Right now I'm looking at the South Korean forces, and right off the bat we have our command unit, which will in fact be the infantry command called the Bondo. This will probably be the name they'll stick with. It has 4 different types, including 2 helicopters, which means these guys will be very, very mobile and able to sneak into a lot of places. We're very much looking forward to how these infantry commands get used in competitive play, which will be in 4 or 5 months, so not too much around. We have a lot of new units to talk about, lots of new commands. The most potent of these, of course, is going to be the 150 pointer. It's only got 5 armor. The really potent ones have like 20, and then the mid-range ones have like, 8 to 12. So this is going to be a pretty poor command tank. Not really going to see this one get used too much. I'm almost certain we'll never see this, just because it's, it's god-awful. However, we do have a command helicopter here, scratched out US on this army thing here. And we're going to see 2 different ways of supplying units with the Koreans, the CH-47C, and we also have the K511 cargo, which, pretty sexy. Look at these nice camo on this, and some spare tires on the bottom. So for our infantry, we're going to have a lot of stuff here. A lot of new units, too. So these are the Byung, and they have the Napalm Launcher. Now this is very similar to what the Spetsnaz have. They will be firing, incendiary rockets as opposed to just spraying napalm. Much more powerful against infantry. Doesn't get the ground effect, so you're not hurt yourself. And these guys can be deployed in 3 ways, in 3 different vehicles that are all brand new, but all very similar to something that we've kind of seen before. And these are just, they have a Browning mounted on it, slightly armored, and this one's actually got more armor, ironically. It's got the same weapon, more armor. The only difference really is, like, minor things like speed. I think this K200 will be the big choice here. This will be the winner overall for the South Koreans. Now we also have the Byung, and the Byung is, it's going to be a main battle squad. It's 20 points, which is considered to be quite expensive. But on the downside, you can only get 2. And this one's a 1990s version, and it's got the same vehicle. But it won't be available in a Cat C deck or Cat B deck. So that's a kind of a problematic unit, despite it being their best one. Now we do have an anti-air squad, the Mistral, being loaded here. Look at the size of that rocket. It is a big, badass rocket. It's usually mounted onto a vehicle, so yeah, that's huge. It's a really tiny squad. And we'll have 3 variants of it, and we will, have 3 different vehicles. Now we also have another anti-air squad here, the Red Eye. It's a 2-man squad. We're going to see 3 vehicles, same ones. These K200, K900s, and KM113A1. That's a mouthful. And we're going to see a 3rd unit here, the Hugh Sam Stinger. SAM, of course, stands for Surface to Air Missile. And Stinger we've seen before. So yeah, the South Koreans have not 1, not 2, but 3 different types of anti-air infantry, and that's 9 anti-air infantry total. You only get 6 deck slots for infantry unless you go for a naval or maritime deck, or marine deck, which means you get, an extra 3. So we don't need this much, but it's kind of cool that they have it available. We're also going to see this RCL, which is an anti-tank team, decent squad size. We're going to see 3 vehicles. It's just our standard 3 guys, by the way, every time. So here's another cool squad. This is our 10-pointer. It's the Sochong Su. And these guys are your main front guys. They're cheap. They'll be cost-effective. And we got 3 different vehicles for them. And if you go for the 1985 type, you'll get an extra 2. Including this CAF V25, which has a good weapon on it. This CAF V4050, which has frag rounds and infantry rounds. So this guy is like such going to be a sick baller boss. This combination here. I look forward to that. We do have a SEAL team, which means they'll be able to be deployed in the ocean. And they have really cool makeup on. Oh yeah. And they can be deployed in a few ways. They are Navy SEALs, so they will have helicopter support. And there's also going to be this little LVP thing with their cool little graphic. This is a really cool graphic. Fun fact with the South Koreans and North Koreans. They have this kind of a standoff with each other, in which they line up their armies across the border from each other every time this year. One time on Armistice Day, every single time. And the South Koreans do this painting stuff not to scare them, but because they have the time to kind of show off, to the North Koreans who can't afford this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, we brought our dragon. So we do have this Yebi gun, which is going to be a South Korean squad. They're going to be your anti-tank with their super bazooka. This is the guy right here. This guy right here has the super bazooka. The rest of them will be holding the M14. Very, very short range, so 5-point unit. That's about how much they're worth. Really, really hard to use these guys. They're basically for ambushing vehicles as they come through. Once again, very hard to use these guys. They'll probably be, best used at in wooded areas, at crossroads and whatnot. And once again, with a slightly better vehicle, I just can't see these guys getting too much use. And some of these symbols on these vehicles are absolutely deadly. Congratulations on you, Jen, on getting really great at doing details. So as far as support options, South Korea has tons of them. And I mean, as far as the Blue Dragons go, South Korea is definitely more powerful of the two. We have our rocket launcher, which is MLRS style, of course, which has a ridiculous 28,000 range for only 60 points. That's a good deal. A simple mortar, 25 points, not bad. It's pretty close to everything else. This is going to be a slightly crappier one because it's a little more expensive. And then suddenly it gets good for the exact same price. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. So here's a 35,000 range gun. It's ridiculously big. It's only going to fire one shell. It's going to be hitting vehicles, hopefully, with concentrated fire. And if it doesn't have concentrated fire, it'll suck. That's just how these things go. But they're huge. It's big rounds. It has a pretty decent dispersion range, which is bad, by the way. You want a smaller dispersion range. And, yeah, ridiculous range. Here's another one with not as ridiculous of a range, but worse overall stats. We'll never see that. Just a lot of these artillery units. I suspect South Korea is just going to be noted as a unit with really great artillery units. Now here's a Vulcan. It can be used against helicopters very well, as well as infantry. And the same is true of this other Vulcan and this other Beho Vulcan. This is an autocannon, I believe, actually. Yes, not a Vulcan at all. And it has radar, which means it'll be very vulnerable to anti-radar, but at the same time, it can do a decent amount of damage. Specifically, 2,800 range against helicopters, 2,800 range against airplanes, and can outrange most infantry. So now here's our two radar-guided rockets. IHawk is used in pretty much every single NATO faction. Or should I say, Blue 4 faction. And, yeah. This is the IHawk pit. 3 rockets. Good range. We'll be seeing that, I have no doubt. Now, the weakness of the South Koreans is definitely not their tanks. They bring to the front the South Korean Chi. Spelled K-I. Kai, it is actually pronounced Chi, as I'm told by many people. And it is an absolute juggernaut. It's got 2 anti-infantry guns, so it can actually just maul your anti-infantry. And then it's got a pretty solid main gun on top of it. You'll usually have this guy closer to the back, but because of its strong front armor, it'll be able to lead assaults as well. Your K1A1, very similarly, has slightly more armor, slightly worse guns, slightly better guns, and will be an actual juggernaut on the battlefield. These, on the other hand, are weaker tanks, and these are your kind of fodder tanks. They can deal with light vehicles, they can deal with infantry, they can deal with a lot of stuff. But their stats are overwhelmingly kind of crappy. So generally in a push, you want to lead with these big heavy tanks, let them take a few hits, pull back, and then let these guys lead the way. Just because you'll get a lot of them, and they don't do that much damage. A 20-point tank, however, will trade with vehicles and infantry very easily. And that's something that's worth noting. If you spread these guys out and have them targeting down vehicles that are coming out, they'll very quickly pay themselves off. I can see a lot of these types of units. Absolutely. This M48A3K, he will have the day. Moving on to South Korean Recon. Not too much to report here. We have a standard vehicle with a gun on it. 30 points. No, most vehicles are 30 points and they have no gun. This one has all the same stats as that, but it has a gun on it, which makes it better than them. This is a 15-point bad boy. More armor, more everything, except it doesn't have good stealth. So this is going to be an infantry sniper. Not sure if it's going to be useful. And here's another infantry sniper. It's got a frag grenade, and truthfully, probably not going to see this one played at all. But it's a Fiat, And keep in mind, Fiat is a car manufacturer. The Fiat 6616. Yeah. Here's a CAF 90. It's got a forward cannon as well as an anti-infantry round. It's kind of generic, but I don't see it happening. I just don't see people using that. This one probably more likely, the 086. You can deploy them in the ocean area and use it to bait out planes and, you know, just get good vision. This is going to be our infantry squad. Judging by all this stuff, it looks like they will be used for both spec ops and for actual recon, as they will be able to pick off vehicles pretty easily. They do, in fact, have the law. Now, this other group here is, you know, pretty damn good too. It's got 2 infantry rifles for fighting and a Carl Gustav, but this one just screams of being a pure standard recon unit, and it has 3 different types of variations of planes, so you can deploy these behind enemy lines if you're lucky. As far as vehicles go, we have a lot of unique vehicles here. The tows are not so unique. We've seen a lot of these. Good AT options there. There's an anti-infantry vehicle, the CAF 4050. We've seen this guy. He's a badass because you can put infantry into him, in his butt. If you're wondering where you put the infantry, in their butts. And yeah, this is a pretty solid vehicle for putting your infantry into. Other ones, that's not bad. You know, the 2 of these are both not bad, but the same. And same thing with this guy. I mean, the only downside is that, you know, oh wait, I know who you are. My mistake. This is the South Korean flamethrower tank. It's 20 points, which makes it actually exceptional, because flamethrower tanks are usually quite expensive. Now, one major problem is the capacity for fuel is actually quite low, 200. So you're going to have to rally out a couple of these or resupply them. It's not a big problem, but for the price, the value is more than right. Moving on down the line, we have another anti-infantry vehicle, not so good. And LVTP-7, we've seen this guy. This is our infantry carrier. You know, it's not bad. It's cool because you have these decals on the side, and I would use this just for the decals. Moving on to our anti-tank weapons, they get weirder and weirder, trust me. Oh yeah. So yeah, there's not too much to talk about here, just anti-tank weapons. That's probably the 5th of the anti-tank weapons, so decent selection here for South Korea, which is always good. I always prefer these 10-pointers myself, but these 45-pointers are just so much better bang for your buck in terms of cost effectiveness. And, you know, range is a big thing, 26 to 25 range versus, you know, a meager 1750. So here's our M18 or M18. It's a 10-point vehicle that can deal with vehicles and infantry. At 10 points, it's actually cost effective. You can trade these very well. And not so much of this one, because he only has this anti-tank gun. He actually has to kill a tank in order to be worthwhile. It's not hard for a 10-point unit to become worthwhile, but, I mean, you gotta keep an eye on these guys. Their range is actually not bad either. And here we are. An anti-infantry vehicle that will never get used and will never see the light of day, but it's here for referencing purposes. So here's our H-1J, which is kind of a hybrid air unit. The Vulcan is an anti-air gun, can be used against infantry. And we have 2 different sets of rocket pods, which will stun the enemy and deal splash damage. And, you know, the guns on the bottom here, we have big rocket pod, little rocket pod, big rocket pod, little rocket pod. And a very cool vehicle design overall. Look forward to seeing this one in action. And this one is less of a hybrid. It's got the tow rocket. It still has that Vulcan cannon up front, which once again can be used against air or ground. And has the rocket pods and the rocket launchers there. These are the kind of helicopters you want to have bringing with other helicopters to joust with other helicopters and eliminate vehicles and whatnot. They're hybrids. They're late game units though, and that's the kind of downside here. So here's another one, very similar, almost exactly the same actually. Is that a... Why would they put that there? Is that really a beacon? Almost like flashing, you know, police lights. Why is it on a helicopter? That's ridiculous. That would give away your position. And of course we have our transport helicopters here. Nothing too big to talk about there. Just good anti-infantry stuff. It's all about mobility. You don't actually care about that vehicle. You care about the cargo. So the South Korean unique bomber here is going to be the A-37B. It's got 2 different types of bombs, which means it will reload faster, but it also means you're going to get more bang per shot. It means even if you get shot down, you're doing twice as much work as a regular bomber. Now, the Block 3D is going to be a pretty powerful air superiority fighter. It's got infrared rockets, it's going to be close range, it's going to be dogfighting, I guarantee it. Same thing with this other block, the 30B. Basically the same concept, except now it's radar missiles, which means it has a slightly higher range. And by slightly, I mean double the range. And yeah, this will be focused down by anti-radar fighters, but it'll be able to kill. And killing is very important in this game. We have the F4DS, and this guy has, you know, very tiny bombs, but I mean, that means that he can restock his payload very quickly. And it's going to be a kind of a carpet bomb effect, I'm pretty sure. Area of effect, yeah. So these guys, you know, look out for your F40Ss. I'm pretty sure they're going to be sick. Here's the guy with a Maverick. These are your anti-tank or snipers. They'll come in, they'll fire their weapon. They also have a Vulcan cannon, so they can also just auto-cannon something down as well. It's going to be very good against light vehicles and infantry, but could probably pack a decent punch on some tanks. And here's another air superiority fighter, the Jigong Ho. Looks very unique to South Korea, and I don't imagine it being the best for air duels. I do imagine they'll be pretty good for picking off helicopters, just because they have this autocannon here, and of course all helicopters are lightly armored. So here's a Republic of Korea Air Force weapon. It's a really cool, unique design, actually, this thing. I've seen it in museums, actually. It's really, really cool. This is basically the equivalent of a Skyhawk, but it does have the Browning weapon, which means that it will actually fire on infantry as well, meaning that it's going to have a slightly higher reload time, and it's not going to auto-evac after it drops its rocket payload, probably. Maybe they'll change that. So here's our anti-radar fighter for the Republic of Korea, of South Korea. ROK is South Korea, by the way. And has a pretty decent set of weapons, actually. And ironically, it's actually countered by itself. It has radar fighter weapons. It has anti-radar fighter weapons. So I don't know if people will choose this. It's a little bit wonky to have both. Because it just means that the enemy just has to deploy an anti-radar fighter and just knock this thing into the sky with relative ease. Yeah, I don't know what to say about this thing. It's a little bit weird. Hopefully they tune it a bit. It would be solid if there were no other anti-radar fighters in the game, but for now I just don't know what to think about this thing. It's weird. It's very weird to me. High damage, but very weird. Moving on to our maritime units, our marine units. You know, South Korea has a decent amount of stuff. I mean, yes, you can get your commands. Oh, that's so neat. But here's the big thing. So here's the Byung, which has radar missiles, which will be used for hitting both planes, and will also be pretty good at hitting. Yeah, actually, it's just planes. This is your AA portion of it. Herp, derp, derp. But yes, it also has like a naval gun, which will be able to hit other planes, and a Browning, which will be able to hit land-based things. So this is a pretty potent little guy. He's 50 points. You get a good supply of them. And you can use it to protect your guys against any kind of bombing runs. And you can also pack a punch on the ground forces. Now, here's another big guy, the Chamsuri, 65 points. He has the Beaufort, which is a really exceptional autocannon. He has the Vulcan, which is an anti-air type thing, and a Browning. So you have 2 basic anti-air sort of, you know, naval units, which, you know, are dead sexy. You know, they have their situational uses, and you'll use these guys a lot. They're actually really good. They knock planes out of the sky easy. Now here's your Dong Hae, which of course has this really weird naval gun once again. It has these kind of autocannon rounds here for dealing with light vehicles, and it has a Beaufort autocannon. So this is going to be your kind of your ground attacker. He will destroy ground. But he'll also be able to do a little bit of damage to boats. Because now, all these boats here only have a little light armor. They are very lightly armored. The autocannon will deal damage to them. Now, of course, we do have the Byung napalm units that we can deploy, as well as a large number of people, if we're looking to go for more of a ground-based approach. But because you're going for the Blue Dragons, usually when you're playing this, and these are the Blue Dragons, South Korea and Japan, you'll want to mix in a lot of ships. If South Korea is supplying all the anti-air units, then definitely Japan will be supplying other things. Now here's the Pohang, which is a rather cool little thing. It's got a harpoon here, which is an air-to-ground type thing. Actually, yeah, these is your units. It's like the AT of the sea. I've used this unit myself. It's really cool. 8750 range. It can pick off small ships and large ships very easily, especially with like Recon vision. It's got another different type of ship weapon, not as high of a range, obviously, but it can hit those helicopters. It's a pretty big juggernaut in the sea. Unfortunately, not a command, so it won't be able to take points, but it'll be able to push things back very easily. And yeah, that's basically all the units from South Korea. Very, very powerful nation. Combined with Japan, they will be almost unstoppable in the ocean. I can just see that the Blue Dragons will become standard for every single competitive team. They have to be. They're just so freaking good. Anyway, that is all of the you know, units for NATO. So if you want to see a specific one, go to my channel. I have a playlist set up for beta. Check it out. My name is Troublemaker. Thank you guys for watching.